He moved into the apartment at the end of September, during those last few weeks of sunlight that felt neither summer nor autumn, when the air begins to slow and the evenings stretch just enough to feel strange. The place was small, high-ceilinged, with pale walls and tall windows that overlooked an alley rarely visited by anyone. It was quiet, too quiet perhaps, but he liked that, liked the way sound didn't linger, how footsteps faded quickly, how the world outside stayed outside. The first time he noticed the shadow, it barely registered. It was late, the room dimly lit by the yellow glow of a desk lamp, and the mark on the far wall looked no different from any imperfection one might expect in old plaster, a faint dark spot near the corner, low to the floor, with soft edges and no definite shape. He assumed it was the shadow of a floor lamp or the uneven paint absorbing light strangely, and thought little of it. But the next night, it was still there. Same place. Same shape. But darker. He adjusted the lighting, moved the lamp, even stood in the middle of the room and waved his arms slowly to see if it reacted, but the shadow remained unchanged. Unmoving. Still slightly formless, still faint enough to ignore if he chose to, but no longer something he could mistake for chance. On the third night, it was sharper, not by much, not enough to describe, but just enough to notice. It hadn't grown in size, hadn't changed position, but the edges were firmer, the contrast clearer, as if it had stepped half a pace closer to the surface it was clinging to. He pressed his hand against the wall where it appeared, felt nothing. Smooth paint. Cool plaster. No dampness, no stain. But the shadow remained, as if it didn't care for the surface beneath it, as if the wall was simply where it had chosen to be seen. He didn't tell anyone. Not because he feared sounding irrational, but because describing it would require him to form thoughts he wasn't yet ready to acknowledge. Something about it, the silence of it, the stillness, made him feel complicit just for noticing. By the fifth night, he stopped turning off the lights completely. Not because the shadow vanished in darkness, it didn't, but because the light gave him something to compare it to, allowed him to pretend it belonged to something, even if he couldn't find what that something was. And every night, it grew just a little clearer. He no longer measured nights by hours or sleep, but by the shadow on the wall, not because he wanted to, but because it had become the only thing that moved with any certainty in a space where time had begun to lose its usual grip. Each evening he would glance toward the same patch of wall, pretending not to expect anything, pretending he hadn't been thinking about it since dawn, but the moment his eyes found the surface, he would feel the same familiar sinking sensation, a subtle pressure in his chest, a low ache behind his eyes, as if his body recognized something before his thoughts could catch up. The shadow never moved while he watched, never flickered or pulsed or shifted in any natural way, but it deepened, thickened, took on density like smoke trying to hold shape, and though it didn't grow in size, it now seemed taller, more upright, its posture resembling the outline of someone standing just slightly off balance, hunched forward but poised, as though listening. He started sleeping in the other room, or tried to, dragging his mattress into the kitchen, avoiding the wall with the shadow, but after 3 nights, it appeared there too, not immediately, not brazenly, but gradually, occupying a new surface with the same quiet confidence, the same impossible logic, as if it was not attached to any object or light source, but rather followed him, binding itself to his awareness. He tested this once by leaving the apartment for several hours before sunset, walking aimlessly through empty streets, avoiding his phone, avoiding clocks, returning just after midnight with the desperate hope that distance might dilute whatever attention the thing had drawn from him. But when he stepped inside and turned on the light, the shadow was already there, waiting, darker than before, and so sharp that it looked like a hole cut into the wall.